The alarm went off at 0300 hours, jolting everyone awake on the bridge of the Resolute. Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison rolled out of his bunk and rushed to the command center. Still pulling on his uniform jacket, the night shift officer, Danny Martinez, was already at the communications console, his face pale in the blue glow of the screens. "Sir, we have an emergency transmission from New Haven Colony on Epsilon 7. Danny said, his voice tight with concern. "It's bad." Jake moved to the console and listened. The audio was broken, filled with static and interference, but the sounds underneath made his blood run cold. Screaming, weapons fire, explosions, and then, through all the chaos, a young voice came through clearly. "This is Amy Peterson at New Haven Colony. We are under attack. I repeat, we are under attack. The creche came without warning. They're killing people. They're taking prisoners. Please, someone help us. There are 3,000 people here. Families. Children. Please." The transmission cut to static. Danny tried to re-establish the connection, but there was nothing. Just empty space where the signal had been. Jake stood frozen for a moment, his mind racing. New Haven was a mining colony on the edge of Coalition space. It was supposed to be safe, protected by treaties and agreements. The colony had humans living there, about 200 of them, along with thousands of other species. The Valrine were there, peaceful farmers who grew food for the sector. The Corthan had a research station studying the unique geology of the moon. "Get me Admiral Carter at Earth Command," Jake ordered, "and wake up everyone." The bridge came alive with activity. Officers rushed to their stations, running diagnostics and pulling up tactical displays. The Resolute was a mid-sized vessel, designed for patrol and escort duties. She had good weapons and strong shields, but she was just one ship. Within minutes, the video link to Earth Command connected. Admiral Helen Carter appeared on the screen, her gray hair pulled back, her eyes alert despite the early hour back on Earth. "Admiral, we received a distress call from New Haven Colony," Jake reported. "They're under attack by creche forces." The transmission was cut off, mid-message. Admiral Carter's expression hardened. "How many humans are on that colony?" "Approximately 200, ma'am, along with nearly 3,000 other colonists. The Galactic Coalition needs to be notified immediately," she said. "I'll contact Ambassador Bennett. In the meantime, plot a course to Epsilon 7 and prepare for possible combat operations." "Yes, ma'am." The transmission ended, and Jake turned to his navigation officer. "Karen, how long to reach New Haven at maximum speed?" Karen Hughes, a young officer with sharp eyes and steady hands, checked her calculations. 36 hours. If we push the engines hard, sir. Then push them." "Danny, broadcast the distress signal to all Coalition vessels in range. Someone closer might be able to respond." But even as he gave the order, Jake knew it was unlikely. This sector was remote, far from the core Coalition worlds. The Resolute was probably the closest military vessel available. Hours passed. Jake remained on the bridge, drinking coffee that had gone cold and staring at the tactical display. The Resolute cut through space at maximum velocity, her engines straining. The engineering crew, led by Greg Palmer, worked overtime to keep everything running smoothly. Finally, a response came from the Galactic Coalition headquarters. Jake watched the official transmission with growing frustration. The Coalition Council acknowledged the distress signal. They expressed concern for the colonists. They promised to investigate the matter thoroughly and send an appropriate response, but they did nothing. Not immediately. The Council wanted to convene a proper session, debate the matter, consider the diplomatic implications. After all, attacking the creche Dominion could trigger a larger conflict. There were procedures to follow, protocols to observe. Jake felt his jaw tighten. While they debated, people were dying. Another message came through, this time from Ambassador Claire Bennett. The human ambassador had argued forcefully for immediate action, but the council had voted against her. The investigation team would be assembled and dispatched within the week. Perhaps 2 weeks at most. 2 weeks. The colony would be gone by then. Everyone on it would be dead or enslaved. Jake paced the bridge, his mind working through possibilities. He couldn't disobey direct orders from the coalition, but he also couldn't just sit back and let innocent people die. Then a new message arrived, encrypted and private. It was from Admiral Carter. Jake read it in his ready room, away from the crew. The message was brief. Protocol 7 is now active. Discretion advised. Jake sat back in his chair, a grim smile crossing his face. Protocol 7. It wasn't an official military procedure. It wasn't written in any handbook or taught at any academy. It was something else entirely. It was humanity's unspoken rule, passed down through generations of soldiers and officers. When human lives are in danger and the bureaucrats won't act, humanity acts alone. Jake returned to the bridge with renewed purpose. Danny, send encrypted messages to the Vengeance and the Defiant. Tell Captains Hayes and Commander Griffin that we're calling a fleet assembly. Coordinates attached. Sir. Those ships are days away from our position, Danny said carefully. I know. But we're going to need them. Jake turned to address the entire bridge crew. Listen up. I know what you're all thinking. We're one ship against an unknown force. The coalition has told us to wait, but there are humans on that colony. Our people. And they called for help. He paused, looking at each face. Young and old, experienced and fresh. All of them wore the uniform of Earth's Space Navy. All of them had sworn an oath. We're going to Epsilon 7. Jake, Captain Lisa Hayes, received the encrypted message while her ship, the Vengeance, was on patrol near the Outer Rim trading routes. She read it twice, then called her first officer to the bridge. We have new orders, she said simply. Plot a course for these coordinates. Maximum speed. Captain, that will take us out of our patrol sector, her first officer noted. I know. Within the hour, the Vengeance changed course. Lisa sent her own messages to other human vessels in the area. The response was immediate. Every captain who received the call understood what it meant. Every single one of them changed course without hesitation. Commander Paul Griffin aboard the carrier Defiant was 3 days away from the assembly point. But he pushed his engines hard. The Defiant was the largest ship in the human fleet, carrying dozens of fighters and a full battalion of Marines. If there was going to be a rescue operation, those Marines would be needed. Paul contacted Marine Commander Linda Scott, who immediately began preparing her troops for deployment. Linda was a veteran of the border wars, tough as steel, and twice as sharp. She knew what combat looked like, and she knew how to win. Get everyone ready for full assault operations, Linda ordered her sergeants. I want weapons checked, armor inspected, and drop pods loaded within 12 hours. Back on the Resolute, Jake Morrison watched as the tactical display updated with new contacts. One by one, human ships appeared on the screen, all converging on the same coordinates just outside Coalition space. Destroyers, frigates, patrol boats, even a few civilian transports that had volunteered to help with evacuation if needed. By the time 30 hours had passed, 12 human warships had assembled. It was nearly a third of all available human military assets in the sector. The sight of them together, floating in formation in the darkness of space, filled Jake with pride and determination. The fleet held a command conference via secure video link. Jake looked at the faces of his fellow captains on his screen. Lisa Hayes, with her short black hair and sharp eyes. Paul Griffin, broad-shouldered and calm. Captain Ben Cooper, of the destroyer Vigilant. Commander Rachel Stone of the frigate Guardian. Each one of them had made the same choice he had. The situation is simple, Jake began. New Haven Colony is under attack by Kresh forces. The coalition has refused to authorize immediate intervention. We're going in anyway. What's the tactical picture? Lisa asked. Danny Martinez shared the latest intelligence. Surveillance drones detected 20 Kresh warships in orbit around Epsilon 7. Ground forces number approximately 2,000 soldiers. The colony has minimal defenses, mostly security personnel with light weapons. 20 ships, Ben Cooper said thoughtfully. We're outnumbered almost 2 to 1. We've faced worse odds, Paul Griffin said. What's the plan? Jake pulled up a tactical diagram. We hit them hard and fast. The Kresh expect slow, methodical coalition responses. They'll be watching for investigation teams and diplomatic vessels. They won't expect a full combat fleet arriving within 2 days of the attack. We use that surprise, Lisa added. Close engagement, wolf pack tactics. Take out their command ship first, then sweep through the rest. What about the colonists on the ground? Asked Rachel Stone. That's where the Defiant comes in, Jake said. Commander Griffin's Marines will deploy as soon as we secure orbital space. Extraction teams will locate and recover all survivors. The coalition is going to be very unhappy about this, Ben noted. Let them be unhappy, Jake replied. We can deal with the political fallout after we save those people. The captains agreed to the plan. Each ship would have specific assignments. The Resolute, Vengeance, and Defiant would form the primary strike group. The smaller vessels would provide support and protect the transports that would carry the rescued colonists. As the conference ended, Jake received another transmission. This one was from Ambassador Claire Bennett at Coalition headquarters. Jake, I know what you're planning, Claire said, her face serious. The Council is watching. They've ordered all human ships to maintain their positions and await further instructions. We never received those orders, Jake said carefully. Communications must be experiencing interference in this sector. Claire smiled slightly. I thought that might be the case. Listen. I can buy you some time, but not much. The moment you engage the Kresh, the entire galaxy will be watching. Make it count. We will. And Jake, bring everyone home. The transmission ended. Jake took a deep breath and looked around his bridge. His crew was ready. Weapons Officer Patrick Stone had all systems armed and prepared. Karen Hughes had the navigation plotted down to the second. Greg Palmer reported that the engines were running at peak efficiency. The fleet began moving as one unit, jumping through space toward Epsilon 7. During the journey, Intelligence Officer Danny Martinez continued monitoring all available communications. What he found made everyone's blood run cold. The Kresh had broadcast a message to the coalition. They declared that New Haven Colony was now under their control. All colonists were being processed. Those suitable for labor would be taken as slaves. Those deemed unsuitable would be eliminated. The Kresh commander demanded territorial concessions in exchange for returning some of the prisoners. The message was calculated to provoke a slow diplomatic response. The Kresh knew the coalition would debate for weeks before acting. By then, the colonists would be scattered across Kresh territory, impossible to recover. But they hadn't counted on humanity's response. Jake shared the Kresh message with his crew. He watched anger flash across their faces. Good. They would need that anger in the fight ahead. The Kresh think they have time, Jake said. They think they're safe behind their fleet and their threats. They're wrong. In 18 hours, we arrive at Epsilon 7. In 19 hours, we're going to show them what happens when you threaten humans. The Galactic Coalition sent more messages ordering the human fleet to stand down. Jake ignored them all. Other species monitored the human movements with confusion and concern. This wasn't how civilized species behaved. This wasn't how the galaxy worked. You didn't just assemble a fleet and attack without proper authorization. But humanity had never been very good at following the galaxy's rules. As the fleet drew closer to their destination, Jake recorded a message to be broadcast the moment they arrived. He chose his words carefully, knowing they would be heard by millions across the galaxy. This is Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison of the human vessel Resolute. We are responding to a distress call from New Haven Colony. The Galactic Coalition has chosen to delay their response. We have not. To the Kresh forces occupying Epsilon 7. Release all colonists immediately and surrender your vessels. This is your only warning. He paused, then added one final line. Negotiations are over. You had your chance to do the right thing. The fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Epsilon 7 system. Sensors immediately detected the Kresh fleet in orbit around the moon. 20 ships, just as intelligence had rapport. The Kresh fleet commander watched the human ships approach on his display screen. His name was Vorkath, and he had conquered 7 colonies in his long military career. This would be his 8th. The humans puzzled him slightly. Their small fleet was badly outnumbered, yet they showed no signs of slowing down or attempting to negotiate. Scan their vessels, Vorkath ordered. I want to know their weapons capacity. His tactical officer worked quickly. Commander, they have standard coalition weapon systems. Plasma cannons, missile batteries, point defense lasers. Nothing we haven't seen before. Vorkath relaxed. Open a channel. Let me speak to their leader. On the Resolute, Jake Morrison received the incoming transmission request. He nodded to Danny Martinez to open the channel. The face of Vorkath appeared on the screen. Reptilian features twisted into what might have been a smile. Human commander, you are outnumbered and outgunned, Vorkath said. Turn your ships around and leave. The colony is ours now. The coalition will eventually negotiate a proper settlement. Jake stared back at the Kresh commander with cold eyes. Release the colonists. Surrender your ships. Last chance. Vorkath laughed, a harsh sound. Or what? You will attack us? You will die? And the colonists will die with you. Be smart, human. Leave while you can. I gave you a chance, Jake said quietly, then cut the transmission. He opened the fleet channel. All ships. Engage at will. Target their command vessel first. Show them what humanity does to slavers. The human fleet split into 3 groups, each moving with precision and speed that surprised the Kresh. The Resolute led one group directly at the enemy center. The Vengeance took her squadron wide to the left. The Defiant and her escorts went right. The Kresh fleet moved to meet them, maintaining their formation. This was their first mistake. They expected a traditional battle, with ships trading fire at long range until one side retreated or was destroyed. That wasn't how humans fought. Jake's group accelerated even faster, closing the distance rapidly. The Kresh opened fire at maximum range. Plasma bolts, streaking through space. The human ships wove through the incoming fire, their superior maneuvering thrusters allowing them to dodge most of the shots. The few hits that landed splashed against shields that held firm. All weapons, target the command ship, Jake ordered. Patrick, I want every shot to count. Patrick Stone, the weapons officer, worked his console with focused intensity. Targeting their shield generators, sir. Firing now. The Resolute's plasma cannons spoke, joined by the guns of the other ships in her group. The concentrated fire hammered into the Kresh command vessel's shields. The Kresh ship returned fire, but the Resolute was already moving, sliding sideways as her thrusters fired. On the left flank, Lisa Hayes brought the Vengeance and her escorts in close to 3 Kresh cruisers. Very close. So close that the Kresh captains must have thought the humans were insane. Now, Lisa ordered calmly. The Vengeance fired her full missile spread at point-blank range. Dozens of missiles covered the short distance in seconds, overwhelming the Kresh ship's point defense systems. Explosions rippled across the enemy hull. One of the Kresh cruisers lost its shields entirely, armor plating torn open to expose the interior. The Kresh fleet tried to adjust, but the human ships were everywhere, moving faster than seemed possible. They didn't maintain safe distances or careful formations. They dove into the enemy fleet like wolves into a herd, striking and moving, coordinating their attacks with split-second timing. Commander Paul Griffin watched the battle from the Defiant, holding his carrier back from the initial engagement. His fighters launched in waves, small craft that swarmed around the larger ships. The Kresh had fighters too. But the human pilots had something the enemy lacked: aggressive creativity. Flight leader Casey Ryan led her squadron straight through a gap in the Kresh formation, her fighters flying so close together they looked like one larger ship on sensors. When the Kresh fighters moved to intercept, Casey's squadron split apart in 6 different directions, each pilot engaging a separate target. Back on the Resolute, Karen Hughes called out a warning. "Sir, 3 Kresh destroyers breaking formation, moving to flank us." "Let them come," Jake said. "Ben, Rachel, you seeing this?" Captain Ben Cooper of the Vigilant and Commander Rachel Stone of the Guardian responded immediately. "We've got them, boss." The 2 smaller human ships broke away from the main group and intercepted the Kresh destroyers. The Kresh expected them to keep their distance and trade long-range fire. Instead, the Vigilant and Guardian came in fast and low, sliding under the Kresh ships and firing upward into their less protected belly armor. One of the Kresh destroyers exploded, its reactor containment failing. The other 2 tried to pull up and away, but the human ships followed like hunting dogs, never giving them space to recover. "Enemy command ship shields at 30%, Patrick reported. "Should we finish them?" "Not yet," Jake said, watching his tactical display. "Born ready," Lisa Hayes replied. The Vengeance came screaming through the center of the battlefield, her hull scorched from near misses but her weapons still firing. She lined up on the Kresh command ship from the opposite side as the Resolute. "Fire everything," Lisa ordered. Both human ships, the Resolute and the Vengeance, opened up with full power. The Kresh command ship's shields collapsed under the combined assault. Plasma bolts tore into the hull. The command ship's weapons fell silent as power systems failed. Vorkath tried to send orders to his fleet, but his communications were down. He tried to maneuver, but the engines weren't responding. Through his viewport, he watched human ships tear through his fleet with brutal efficiency. 20 minutes into the battle, the Kresh fleet had lost 8 ships destroyed and 6 more crippled. The remaining vessels began to break formation, each captain making their own decision to flee. "Don't let them escape," Jake ordered. "Every ship that leaves here will just attack another colony somewhere else." The human fleet pursued. This was the part that shocked the galaxy observers watching from a distance. Other species would have let the defeated enemy retreat. It was civilized. It was proper. But humans didn't let slavers and murderers escape to fight another day. The chase lasted another 30 minutes. Human ships ran down each fleeing Kresh vessel. Some of the enemy captains tried to surrender, broadcasting pleas for mercy. Commander Griffin's response was transmitted on an open channel so everyone could hear. "You showed no mercy to the colonists. We show no mercy to you." When it was over, the Kresh fleet was gone. 20 ships reduced to debris floating in orbit. Not a single Kresh vessel escaped. Jake took a moment to assess his own fleet. The Resolute had taken hits, but nothing critical. The Vengeance was more battered, with 1 engine offline and several hull breaches. But she was intact. The smaller ships reported various damage, but all were operational. Most importantly, they hadn't lost a single ship. 17 crew members were wounded, 2 of them seriously, but no one had died. "Status of the colony?" Jake asked. Danny Martinez worked his console. "Reading approximately 2,000 Kresh soldiers on the surface, sir. They've concentrated in the main settlement and the mining facilities. Colonists are being held in several detention areas." The drop pods hit the surface of Epsilon 7 with thunderous impacts, their reinforced hulls absorbing the shock. Hatches blew open, and human marines poured out. Weapons ready, eyes scanning for threats. The surface of the moon was rocky and gray, dotted with mining facilities and prefabricated colony buildings. Sergeant Kevin Brooks was first out of his pod, his rifle up and tracking. His squad formed around him automatically, each Marine covering a sector. They had landed near the main detention facility, a large warehouse, where the creche were holding most of the colonists. "Contact, 11 o'clock." One of his Marines called out. Kevin saw them. A patrol of creche soldiers, maybe 10 of them, turning to face the unexpected arrival. The creche were big, nearly 7 feet tall, with thick armor and heavy weapons. They looked dangerous. Kevin and his squad were more dangerous. The Marines opened fire with disciplined bursts. The creche tried to return fire, but they were too slow. In 5 seconds, the patrol was down. Kevin didn't stop to check them. His mission was clear. Reach the detention facility and secure the colonists. "Move up," he ordered. "Stay tight." All around the colony, similar scenes played out. Marine squads hit their designated landing zones and pushed forward immediately. The creche ground forces tried to respond, but they were scattered and confused. They had just watched their entire fleet get destroyed in orbit. Now, armed humans were dropping from the sky in overwhelming numbers. Linda Scott commanded the assault from a mobile command post that had landed with the second wave. She watched video feeds from her squad leaders, coordinating the attack with calm precision. "Third platoon. You've got creche reinforcements moving toward your position from the east. 15 contacts." "Roger that, Commander," came the reply. "We see them." Linda switched to another feed. "First platoon, status on the mining facility?" "Secured, ma'am." 50 colonists freed, all alive. Some injuries, but nothing critical. "Ah. Good work. Get them to the evacuation zone." The battle was not without cost. The creche might have been surprised and outmatched, but they were still professional soldiers. They used the colony buildings for cover, setting up defensive positions and fighting back hard. Corporal Nicole Stevens, a combat medic, worked frantically to save a wounded Marine who had taken a direct hit from a creche plasma rifle. The Marine's name was Jake Wilson, and he was barely conscious. "Stay with me, Jake," Nicole said, her hands steady as she applied emergency medical foam to the wound. "You're going to be fine." "No. Did we get them?" Jake asked, weakly. "Every single one," Nicole assured him. "Now shut up and let me work." Back at the detention facility, Kevin Brooks and his squad reached the main entrance. The doors were sealed, reinforced with additional barriers the creche had installed. Inside, Kevin could hear voices, colonists calling out, asking what was happening. "Breach charge," Kevin ordered. His demolitions expert placed the charge, and everyone stepped back. The explosion blew the doors inward with a sharp crack. Kevin went through first, his weapon ready. But the immediate entry room was empty. "Clear," he called. "Move in." The detention facility was a maze of corridors and holding cells. The creche had separated the colonists by species and age, probably sorting them for the slave markets. Kevin's squad moved methodically, checking each room. They found the first group of colonists in a large room that had once been a storage area. 30 people, mostly Valrine families, huddled together in fear. When they saw the human Marines, confusion and hope warred on their faces. "We're here to get you out," Kevin said, lowering his rifle. "Stay calm and follow my instructions." "The creche," one of the Valrine said, his translator making his words understandable. "They said they would kill us if anyone tried to rescue us." "The creche don't get a say anymore," Kevin replied. As his squad escorted the first group out, Kevin heard gunfire deeper in the facility. He left 2 Marines with the colonists and pushed forward with the rest of his team. They found another squad pinned down by creche soldiers who had barricaded themselves in the central corridor. "Flank them," Kevin ordered. "Use the side passages." His Marines split up, moving through maintenance corridors that the creche hadn't covered. Within minutes, they had the enemy soldiers surrounded. The fight was brief and decisive. In another part of the colony, Sergeant Angela Foster lay on the roof of a processing plant, her sniper rifle steady in her hands. She had a clear view of the creche command post, a fortified building where the enemy ground commander was coordinating the defense. "I count 12 targets," she reported to Linda Scott. "All officers and communication personnel. Can you take them? Linda asked. All of them? Give me 30 seconds. Angela adjusted her scope and began to breathe slowly, timing her shots between heartbeats. The first round took down the creche commander, who had been standing near a window. The second shot destroyed their main communication console. The third, fourth, and fifth shots took out officers who tried to respond. By the time the creche soldiers inside the command post realized they were under attack from long range, Angela had eliminated every target of value. The enemy defense collapsed into chaos without leadership or communications. The fighting continued for several hours, but the outcome was never in doubt. The human Marines moved through the colony like a storm, overwhelming every creche position. They fought with a combination of superior training, better equipment, and absolute determination. But more than that, they fought with purpose. Every Marine knew there were innocent people counting on them. Every Marine had heard that desperate distress call from Amy Peterson. This wasn't just a military operation. This was personal. Kevin Brooks finally reached the section of the detention facility where the human colonists were being held. He blew through another door and found them. Nearly 200 people, from small children to elderly grandparents. They looked exhausted, terrified, and hurt, but they were alive. United States Space Navy, Kevin announced. We're taking you home. For a moment, there was silence. Then someone started crying. Then someone else. Soon the entire room was filled with sounds of relief and joy. A young girl pushed through the crowd. She was maybe 15 years old, with dark hair and fierce eyes. This was Amy Peterson, the girl who had sent the distress signal. I knew you would come, she said to Kevin. I told everyone that humans don't abandon their own. I knew you would come. Number 3. Kevin knelt down to her level. We heard you. That was very brave. What you did. You saved a lot of lives today. Amy wiped her eyes. Are the creche gone? Every last one of them, Kevin confirmed. You're safe now. Linda Scott watched the tactical display as green markers replaced red ones across the colony. Her Marines had secured every major location. The creche ground forces were eliminated or in full retreat into the wilderness, where they wouldn't survive long in the harsh environment. All units. This is Commander Scott. Begin Phase 2. Locate any remaining colonists and prepare them for evacuation. Medical teams. Start triage on the wounded. We're bringing everyone home. The evacuation was massive and complex. 3,000 colonists needed to be processed, treated, and transported. Combat medics like Nicole Stevens worked alongside civilian doctors who had survived the attack. Engineers like Greg Palmer came down from orbit to restore power and life support to damaged buildings. Jake Morrison descended to the surface in a shuttle, wanting to see the colony for himself. He walked through the detention facility, past the freed colonists being organized for transport. Many of them approached him, wanting to shake his hand, to thank him. A Korthan elder, his translator working to convey his words, spoke to Jake with tears in his eyes. The coalition told us to wait, to be patient. That help would come through proper channels. We would have all been dead by then. Thank you for not waiting. Jake felt the weight of the decision he had made. Breaking orders, risking his career, potentially starting a diplomatic incident. But looking at these people, these families who were alive because he had acted, he knew it had been the right choice. Amy Peterson found him too. She was helping carry medical supplies, refusing to just sit and wait. You're Admiral Morrison? She asked. Lieutenant Commander, Jake corrected. I'm not an admiral. You should be, Amy said firmly. You saved us. All of us. You saved yourselves, Jake replied. You were. The Galactic Coalition Council chamber was filled with representatives from 47 different species, all talking at once. The emergency session had been called immediately after the battle at Epsilon 7 ended. Ambassador Claire Bennett sat in the human delegation section, her expression neutral as accusations flew around the room. High Arbiter Thex, a tall Korthan with silver skin and multiple eye stalks, called for order. His voice, amplified by the chamber's speakers, cut through the noise. "We will proceed with proper protocol," Vex announced. "The Kresh Dominion has filed a formal complaint against humanity for unprovoked military action, resulting in the destruction of 20 warships and the deaths of over 2,000 soldiers." The Kresh ambassador, a scarred veteran named Krell, stood to speak. This was an act of war. The humans attacked without coalition authorization. They slaughtered our forces without mercy. We demand reparations and severe sanctions against Earth. Claire stood calmly. "May I respond?" "The human representative has the floor," Thex said. Claire walked to the center of the chamber, where everyone could see her clearly. She activated a holographic display, showing the timeline of events. 3 days ago, the colony of New Haven on Epsilon 7 sent a distress signal. The signal, which I will now play, contained clear evidence of an unprovoked attack. Amy Peterson's voice filled the chamber. The young girl's desperate plea for help, the screams in the background, the sounds of weapons fire. Several ambassadors looked uncomfortable. "Humanity immediately notified this council," Claire continued. "We requested authorization for an emergency rescue operation. The council voted to delay action pending a full investigation, a process that would have taken weeks. By then, every colonist would have been dead or scattered across Kresh slave markets. Proper procedure must be followed." The Korthan ambassador interjected. "We cannot have individual species launching military operations without approval." "You're absolutely right," Claire agreed. "Proper procedure should be followed. The Kresh should have followed proper procedure and not attacked a peaceful colony. But they didn't, so we were faced with a choice. Follow your slow procedures and let 3,000 innocent beings die, or act immediately and face your disapproval afterward." She paused, looking around the chamber. "We chose to save lives. We would make the same choice again." The chamber erupted in debate. Some species supported the human action, particularly those who had citizens on New Haven. Others worried about the precedent it set. The Kresh delegation demanded punishment. Thex called for order again. "A coalition investigation team has now visited Epsilon 7. We will hear their report." Epsilon. The lead investigator, a Valrine scientist named Sereth, presented his findings. The investigation had been thorough. They documented the Kresh attack, the capture and sorting of colonists, and the preparations to transport them off-world as slaves. "We found clear evidence that the Kresh intended to execute approximately 800 colonists deemed unsuitable for labor," Sereth reported, his voice shaking slightly. The execution site had already been prepared. If the human fleet had not intervened when it did, my own species members would have been among the first killed. The chamber fell silent. Even the Kresh ambassador looked uncomfortable. "Furthermore," Sereth continued, "the human military operation was conducted with remarkable precision. Civilian casualties were minimal. The humans engaged only military targets. Once the Kresh forces were neutralized, they immediately began rescue operations. All 3,000 colonists were safely evacuated." "They destroyed our entire fleet," Krell protested. "That is excessive force. Your fleet was in orbit around a captured colony, holding thousands of hostages," Claire shot back. "What did you expect? That we would politely ask you to leave?" The debate continued for hours. Various ambassadors spoke for and against humanity's actions. Finally, Thex called for a vote on the Kresh complaint. The result surprised many. By a margin of 32 to 15, the council rejected the Kresh complaint and declined to impose sanctions on humanity. Too many species had family members who had been saved by human intervention. The political reality was clear. Humanity had done what the council should have done, but the council also passed a resolution about future actions. Any species launching military operations without approval would face review. It was a compromise that satisfied no one completely, but allowed everyone to save face. Claire left the chamber and immediately contacted Earth. Within hours, she was on a secure call with Admiral Carter and several Earth government officials. The Council voted in our favor, Claire reported, but they're nervous. We've shown that we won't wait for their approval when lives are at stake. That makes them uncomfortable. It should make slavers uncomfortable too, Admiral Carter replied. What's the mood among the other species? Everyone. Mixed. Some are grateful. Some are worried we're too aggressive. But here's the interesting part. We've already received 3 requests from other colonies asking for human protection. They don't trust the coalition to respond quickly enough in an emergency. Over the next few weeks, the story of Epsilon 7 spread across the galaxy. News networks showed footage of the battle, of the marine assault, of the emotional reunions between rescued colonists and their families. The image of young Amy Peterson hugging Sergeant Kevin Brooks became iconic. Jake Morrison returned to Earth briefly for debriefing. He expected punishment, maybe even a court-martial. Instead, he found himself being promoted to admiral and given command of a new fleet being assembled specifically for rapid response operations. You broke the rules, Admiral Carter told him in a private meeting. You risked your career and possibly started a diplomatic incident. But you also saved 3,000 lives and showed the galaxy what humanity stands for. That's worth a promotion. The new fleet would be called the Rapid Response Fleet, and its flagship would be a newly commissioned battleship named the Relentless. The name was chosen to honor humanity's response to the Epsilon 7 crisis. Captain Lisa Hayes received a promotion too, and her ship, the Vengeance, underwent extensive repairs and upgrades. Commander Paul Griffin was given a second carrier to command. The human military was expanding, preparing to take on this new role the galaxy was pushing them toward. Back on Earth, Amy Peterson became something of a celebrity. News programs wanted to interview her. Schools invited her to speak. But Amy had other plans. She enrolled in the United States Space Naval Academy, beginning the long process of becoming an officer. I want to help others the way humanity helped me, she told a reporter. I want to be ready when the next distress call comes in. Her story inspired thousands of other young people to enlist. Applications to military service across all human nations increased dramatically. The generation that grew up hearing about Epsilon 7 wanted to be part of that legacy. The colony of New Haven was rebuilt quickly. Humanity sent engineering teams and construction materials. Other species contributed as well. Grateful for the rescue. Within 6 months, the colony was functioning again, now with a small human military garrison for protection. The colonists erected a monument at the center of their settlement. It was a simple stone pillar with names engraved on all sides. The names of every human service member who had participated in the rescue operation. At the top, in multiple languages, was an inscription that read, "When the galaxy turned away, humanity charged forward. We are forever grateful." The Kresh Dominion withdrew from the sector, unwilling to risk another confrontation with human forces. Their ambassador to the coalition resigned in disgrace. Several other aggressive species that had been expanding their territory through force suddenly became much more cautious. The galaxy learned a lesson at Epsilon 7. Humanity might be young compared to other species. They might be impulsive and unwilling to follow slow bureaucratic procedures, but when innocent lives were threatened, they would act, quickly, decisively, and without mercy for those who preyed on the weak. Pirates operating near human space began avoiding colonies with any human presence. Slavers marked entire sectors as too dangerous if humans might respond. The mere possibility of human intervention became a deterrent. 6 months after the battle, the Galactic Coalition formally created the Rapid Intervention Protocol, a framework for emergency responses to attacks on colonies. It was based entirely on humanity's Epsilon 7 operation, though the Council was careful not to admit that publicly. But everyone knew the truth. If there was an emergency, you called the humans. They would arrive before the official investigation team even assembled. They would ask questions later, after everyone was safe. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Relentless, looking at the tactical displays showing his new fleet. 15 ships, all staffed by veterans who had proven themselves at Epsilon 7. They were positioned strategically throughout the sector, ready to respond within hours to any distress call. "Admiral, we're receiving a message from Coalition headquarters," Danny Martinez reported. He had stayed with Jake, promoted to full lieutenant and chief communications officer. "Let's hear it." The message was routine. Updates on shipping routes and 2 years had passed since the Battle of Epsilon 7, and the galaxy had changed in ways both obvious and subtle. The human rapid response fleet had grown to 25 ships, stationed at strategic points throughout known space. Admiral Jake Morrison commanded from the Relentless, which had become as famous as its crew. On Earth, at the Naval Academy in San Diego, Cadet Amy Peterson stood at attention during her second-year evaluation. She was 18 now, taller and more confident than the scared girl who had sent that desperate distress call. Her instructors said she had natural leadership qualities. They also said she studied harder than anyone else in her class. "Why did you join the academy?" her evaluation officer asked. A standard question. "Because someone answered when I called for help," Amy replied. "Because I want to be ready to answer when someone else needs me." The officer noted her response and smiled. Everyone knew her story. Everyone at the academy had seen the footage of Sergeant Kevin Brooks pulling her from that detention facility. That moment had become part of military training, an example of why their work mattered. Across the galaxy, the impact of Epsilon 7 continued to spread. In the Outer Rim territories, 3 new colonies had been established with human protection, guaranteed from day one. These colonies attracted species who wanted the safety that came with human presence. It was changing the demographic map of the sector. Commander Paul Griffin, now promoted to captain, oversaw training exercises with his expanded carrier group. His Marines, including Linda Scott, who now commanded an entire battalion, practiced rapid deployment techniques that had been refined based on the Epsilon 7 operation. "Faster," Linda called out as drop pods launched during the simulation. "Every second counts. People are dying while you're still strapping in," the Marines responded, improving their deployment time by another 30 seconds. They trained relentlessly because they knew that someday, somewhere, it wouldn't be a simulation. It would be real people counting on them to arrive in time. In the Coalition Council chambers, the political landscape had shifted. Ambassador Claire Bennett now chaired the Emergency Response Committee, a newly created position with real authority. The committee could authorize immediate military intervention in cases of imminent danger to civilian populations, cutting through the bureaucracy that had delayed the Epsilon 7 response. "Humanity changed the rules," Thex told Claire during a private conversation. "We're still not entirely comfortable with how quickly you act, but we cannot deny that your methods save lives." "We didn't want to change the rules," Claire replied. "We just wanted to save people." "The galaxy made it complicated." "The galaxy is always complicated," Thex said with what might have been a smile. "But perhaps sometimes simple action is the right answer to complicated problems." The Kresh Dominion had become much quieter after their defeat. Their military expansion had stopped completely. Several border colonies that the Kresh had been eyeing decided to accept human protection offers, effectively blocking any future Kresh aggression in those sectors. But not everyone was happy with humanity's new role. Some species worried about human military power growing too large. Others resented the influence humanity now wielded in the coalition. There were quiet complaints in diplomatic circles about human arrogance and aggressive tendencies. Jake Morrison heard these complaints during a coalition military conference. A Corthan admiral suggested that humanity's rapid response doctrine was destabilizing the region. "Destabilizing for whom?" Jake asked calmly. "For pirates? For slavers? For anyone who wants to attack peaceful colonies? Good. I hope they feel destabilized. I hope they worry every single day that if they hurt innocent people, we'll show up and end them." The conference room fell silent. The Corthan admiral started to respond, then stopped. "Because ultimately, What could he say? The results spoke for themselves. Since Epsilon 7, attacks on civilian colonies in human-protected sectors had dropped by 90%. On the rebuilt colony of New Haven, life had returned to normal. The Valrine farmers were growing crops again. The Corthan researchers had rebuilt their laboratory. The human population had actually grown, with families moving in who felt safe under the protection of the garrison stationed there. The monument at the center of the colony had become a gathering place. Colonists would bring flowers and leave small offerings. Tour groups visited to hear the story of the battle and rescue. It had become a symbol of something larger than just one military operation. Governor Peter Santos, who had been elected to lead the colony after the attack, stood by the monument one evening. He was one of the survivors, a human engineer who had hidden in the mining tunnels during the Kresh occupation. "Do you think they'll come back?" asked a young Valrine child who was visiting the monument with her family. "The Kresh?" "No," Santos said gently. "They learned their lesson. And even if they did come back, help would arrive long before they could hurt anyone. Because humans don't abandon their own," the child said, repeating a phrase that had become common across the galaxy. "That's right. And we consider everyone on this colony to be our own." Back on the Relentless, Jake Morrison reviewed reports from across the sector. The Rapid Response Fleet had been called out 12 times in the past 2 years. Most of those had been false alarms, or situations that resolved peacefully. 3 had been actual combat operations against pirates and raiders. Every operation had been successful. Every threatened civilian had been rescued. But Jake knew it was only a matter of time before they faced something bigger. The galaxy was a dangerous place, and Epsilon 7 had been just one incident among many. There would be other crises, other desperate calls for help. His communicator chimed. It was Danny Martinez from the bridge. "Admiral, we're receiving a distress signal from the mining station at Kepler Station. They report unknown vessels approaching with hostile intent." Jake felt the familiar surge of adrenaline. "Sound, general quarters. Plot and intercept course. How long until we can reach them?" 4 hours at maximum speed, sir. "Make it 3. And transmit our standard response." Danny nodded and opened the communications channel. The message went out immediately, transmitted across space to reach the frightened people at Kepler Station. It was simple, just a few words, but they carried the weight of humanity's promise. "Human fleet inbound. Hold position. We're coming." At Kepler Station, the station manager received the message and felt relief wash over him. He immediately broadcast to all personnel. "Help is coming. Human forces are en route. Prepare for evacuation protocols, but stay calm. They're coming." The crew of the station had heard the stories about Epsilon 7. They knew about Admiral Morrison and the Relentless. They knew that when humans said they were coming, they meant it. Those words weren't empty promises. They were a guarantee written in the wreckage of 20 Kresh warships and the grateful tears of 3,000 rescued colonists. The Relentless and her escort ships jumped to faster than light speed, racing toward Kepler Station. The crew moved with practiced efficiency, everyone knowing their role. Weapons were armed, shields were raised, Marines prepared for possible deployment. Jake stood on the bridge, watching the tactical display update in real time. He thought about how much had changed in 2 years, how humanity had gone from being dismissed as too young and aggressive to being the first responders the galaxy called in a crisis. It had come at a cost. The diplomatic complications were real. The resentment from some species was real. The responsibility was enormous. But looking at situations like this, where his fleet could make the difference between life and death for innocent people, Jake knew it was worth it. ETA, 2 hours 50 minutes, Karen Hughes reported from navigation. "Good work. Maintain current speed." Jake opened a fleet-wide channel. "All ships, this is Morrison. We have another situation developing. I don't know what we'll find when we arrive, but I know this. There are people out there who called for help. We're going to make sure they're safe. That's what we do. That's who we are. Across the fleet, officers and crew members acknowledged the transmission. Some of them had been at Epsilon 7. Others had joined afterward, inspired by the story. But all of them understood what it meant to be part of humanity's response force. On Earth, Amy Peterson sat in a classroom, learning about interstellar navigation. Her datapad chimed with a news alert. Human fleet, responding to emergency at Kepler Station. She smiled slightly. That would be Admiral Morrison's fleet. He would take care of it, just like he had taken care of her. She returned her attention to her studies. In 2 more years, she would graduate and receive her commission. In 3 years, she might be on one of those ships, responding to someone else's desperate call for help. The thought didn't scare her. It motivated her. Back at New Haven Colony, the evening shift was ending. Workers headed home to families. The garrison conducted its routine patrol. Life went on peacefully, under the protective presence of humanity's promise. The monument stood silent in the growing darkness, its inscription visible even in the dim light. Names of service members carved in stone, words of gratitude in multiple languages. A permanent reminder of the day when humanity showed the galaxy who they were. When the galaxy turned away, humanity charged forward. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Relentless as his ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel near Kepler Station. The hostile vessels were visible on sensors. 3 of them, moving to intercept the station. All weapons ready, sir, Patrick Stone reported. Shields at maximum, Karen confirmed. Contact the hostile vessels, Jake ordered. Standard warning. The communication went out. A message that had become standard across human space. This is the human vessel. Relentless. You are threatening civilian lives. Withdraw immediately, or be destroyed. This is your only warning. The hostile ships began to turn away. Apparently, the reputation of human response was enough. They weren't willing to test whether the stories about Epsilon 7 were true. They're leaving, sir, Danny reported. Heading out of the system at high speed. Jake nodded. Stand down from combat alert. Send a team to the station to check for damage and casualties. The crisis was over almost before it began. Just the presence of human forces had been enough to end the threat. That was the real legacy of Epsilon 7. Not the battle itself, but the message it sent. Humanity would answer the call. Always. Quickly. Decisively. Without hesitation. And the galaxy knew it. Diplomatic meetings. But at the end, there was a note that made Jake smile. 2 more colonies were officially requesting human protection details. The galaxy was learning to trust humanity, even if they didn't always agree with human methods. Anything else? Jake asked. No, sir. All stations report ready. We're standing by for orders. Jake nodded. Satisfied. Somewhere out in the vast darkness of space, someone might be in trouble. Someone might send out a desperate call for help. And when they did, humanity would be ready to answer. They always would be. Brave enough to call for help. Will you get in trouble for coming here? Jake smiled. Probably. But that's okay. Some things are worth getting in trouble for. As night fell on Epsilon 7, the human fleet maintained orbital positions while the evacuation continued. Transport ships landed and departed in regular intervals, carrying colonists up to the larger vessels where they could receive proper medical care and food and rest. The galaxy watched everything. Recorded by observation, satellites, and news drones. The speed and efficiency of the human operation amazed military analysts. The ruthlessness with which the Kresh fleet had been destroyed disturbed some species. The dedication to saving every colonist, regardless of their species, impressed many more. Jake stood on the surface, watching the stars, thinking about what came next. The Galactic Coalition would have questions. The Kresh Dominion would demand answers. Humanity had just changed the rules of how the galaxy operated. But right now, 3,000 people were alive who should have been dead or enslaved. That was what mattered. Everything else could wait. Jake opened a channel to the Defiant. Paul. Your turn. Get those Marines down there, and bring our people home. Commander Griffin smiled. With pleasure. Linda, you're up. Marine Commander Linda Scott had been waiting for this moment. Her troops were already loaded into drop pods. Armed and ready. She opened a channel to all her units. Listen up, Marines. There are 3,000 innocent people down there who've been terrorized by these monsters. We're going to get every single one of them out. Stay sharp, stay together, and remember your training. Let's go to work. The drop pods launched from the Defiant, dozens of them streaking down toward the surface of Epsilon 7 like falling stars. The battle in space was over. Now, the real rescue operation would begin. Ted. Maybe more hiding behind the moon itself. Jake opened a channel to all ships in his fleet. All vessels. This is Morrison. You know the mission. You know what's at stake. Stay sharp, watch each other's backs, and let's bring our people home. The human fleet accelerated toward the enemy, weapons armed, and shields at maximum. The Kresh fleet began moving to intercept. Confident in their numerical advantage, they had no idea what was about to hit them. We're going to find out what happened there. And if there are survivors, we're going to bring them home. The Coalition can file whatever complaints they want afterward, but we're not leaving our people behind. The crew responded with nods and determined expressions. No one questioned the decision. This was what it meant to be human, in a galaxy that moved too slowly. The Resolute continued on her course, racing through the darkness toward New Haven. Behind her, across the sector, other human ships received their orders and began moving. Captains made their own decisions, knowing the risks, understanding the consequences. Jake stood on the bridge and watched the stars stream past. Somewhere ahead, people were suffering. People were scared. A young girl named Amy Peterson had sent out a desperate plea for help. The galaxy might not respond. The Coalition might not care. But humanity heard that cry for help. And humanity was coming.